Austin Talks.
Yesterday, May 15th, marked a monumental day in the history of the modern world. May 15th, 1948 was the day that Israel became a nation. Palestinians who had held the land that up to that point marked that date as one of the most catastrophic in their history. Both sides have been fighting over existence, land, politics, and so forth just about ever since that day. I've asked two gentlemen Jeff Klein has been a guest before on the program, Messianic Rabbi Henry Morse from the, I better get this right, Sha'ar.
You'll get it.
Sha'ar Hashamayim.
You're Jewish. You did good.
I did my best. Don't ask the people from the Anti-Defamation League that. But anyway, I've been excommunicated long ago. But the last time we were talking about this, we were talking about the treatment by the Palestinians by Israel. And a lot of pro-Israel people called, a lot of pro-Palestinian people called. One thing I do know is that terrorist groups around the world use this whole aspect of the treatment of Palestinians as their mantra, as their war cry against the state of Israel. That this is why they shouldn't exist, and so forth and so forth. Well, Jeff Klein has just recently got back from there. Jeff Klein was on the program, and the last time Rabbi Morse called in to be a part of the program, we ended with, you all want to pick it up with Jeff. Jeff, go.
Jimmy, hi.
How are you?
Thanks for having me on. I'm
Pleasure.
glad to be here as usual. Jimmy, I appreciate the introduction you gave because, like a lot of events in history, there are two sides and two ways of marking them. Yesterday, for Israel and its supporters, is Israel Independence Day. For the Palestinians and many of their supporters around the world, that day marks what they call their catastrophe, or Nakba in Arabic. As you know, when the United Nations suggested dividing British Mandate Palestine in 1947, the Arab population, which were 2/3 of the population of Palestine, did not agree. They opposed what they saw as giving part of their land to newcomers, the Israeli settlers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the subsequent fighting that broke out, even before Israel declared its independence unilaterally, over 400,000 Palestinians had been expelled or fled from fear of massacre from their homes in Palestine by the time Israel declared its independence.
Mm-hmm.
In the months following that, another 400,000 Palestinians were expelled or fled, and 500 Palestinian villages were destroyed by the Israelis, many of them dynamited or bulldozed, and millions of Palestinians to this day live in exile from their land in surrounding countries or around the world. So very justifiably, they regard this anniversary of Israel as their catastrophe. Mm-hmm. And the catastrophe continues today, as you know. Israel continues to build settlements in the remaining part of the land that has been designated for a Palestinian state. More Palestinians are expelled, jailed, harassed. And in Gaza, 1.5 million Palestinians are under siege. So this Nakba, this catastrophe, continues today.
Mm-hmm. Whereas on the other side of the coin, many people who are pro-Israel will say that these people are terrorists. They are launching rockets into Israel. They're launching rockets into Jerusalem. They're killing our people. There are people such as Arafat and many other Muslim or Arab leaders who have Hezbollah. There are so many terrorist organizations, believe me. You couldn't even list them half the time. They're saying at the same time, we have a right to exist. We are going to stay here. We're going to do what we feel we need to do, and we will fight to the death to get this done. I'm a person that's been in the region. I want to look for a peaceful settlement. I'm looking at some people who can say, well, look, regardless of which way this rules, somebody's going to be unhappy, Rabbi. It's always going to be, if we got a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, and it just worked, there's still going to be people that are going to be unhappy. Pick it up from there.
You know, I'd like to address what Jeff said concerning the issue of the Jews expelling. And I'd like to read from a book that I have written in 1950, copyright. This is the first print edition. I got this in Israel on the way to Ben Yehuda Street, which is a wonderful area if you go to Israel. And this is by the district police headquarters, the British police headquarters, and this is part of their report. They say, The situation in Haifa remains unchanged. By the way, the date is the 26th of April, 1948. The situation in Haifa remains unchanged. Every effort is being made by the Jews to persuade the Arab populace to stay and carry on with their normal lives, to get their shops and businesses open, and to be assured that their lives and interests will be safe. Now, he has a number of different letters in here. This was written by the author, Lieutenant Colonel Moshe Perlman, a nice Jewish boy, obviously. And the name of the book is The Army of Israel. Now, why does a man of this caliber write about the Army of Israel and write favorably and put this in photocopied form? He actually has photocopies in here of the letters concerning the issue of the Jewish people welcoming the Arabs, the Muslim, the non-Jewish population to stay and live. This was good.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
I want Jeff to respond to that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, finish.
Oh,
that.
finish. So sorry, I didn't understand your sign language.
No, go ahead.
So the question we have to ask ourselves is, who's at blame? You know, if you look May 15th, 1948, it was actually May 14th, 1948, they became a nation, voted in by the UN. If you look at May 15th, 1948, the 5 surrounding Muslim nations descended upon Israel, and the statement that was made was that we will wipe them off the face of the planet and drive them to the sea. It'll be like the Mongolian massacres. We'll kill them. Now the question is, what kind of a military power was Israel back then? They had nothing. They had just previously left World War II, 1945 at the end, and they were struggling to just survive as a people, just to live. And the only option they had was to die. The second question you have to ask yourself is, we're talking about the concept of whether or not the Palestinians are the ancient indigenous people of the land. And I know we probably don't have time to get it in this bout, but I would like to deal with that, because not only is that historically wrong, but there's many historical documents all the way back to the time of Emperor Hadrian in 130 AD, who says that we will rename Israel after their ancient enemies, the Philistines, and then it became anglicized. The question we have to ask is, are there an ancient indigenous people with a Palestinian language or any Palestinian culture that even existed?
Jeff.
Well, you know, you can selectively quote what you like, although I've never heard of this book by the British officer Moshe Perlman.
It's right here.
Something tells me it may not be exactly an objective account. But at the same time that he's talking about events in Haifa, which is in the northern part of Palestine and became part of Israel, in Jaffa, which was the main city in the western part of Palestine, a giant car bomb had exploded in the Arab neighborhood. The Arab quarters were under mortar assault by Zionist extremists every day during the month of April. And in fact, there was a huge military operation around Jaffa in April, just when that quote was made, that the Israelis called Operation Chametz. And the rabbi knows what that means. Before Passover, you clean out all the impure stuff from your house, if you're an observant Jew. So in Operation Chametz, the Arabs, the Palestinians who lived around Jaffa, were the impure things that had to be gotten rid of. And they did. So before Israel officially declared its independence, and by the way, this was a unilateral act, it was not declared by the United Nations, most of the Palestinians who were going to flee had already fled because there were massacres and attacks on their communities throughout the land of Palestine. So, sure, there were some Israeli spokespeople that said, yeah, we want to live in peace in public, but in private, it was very clear that a large Palestinian minority was not going to be tolerated in the Jewish state.
We'll stop right there for a second. 617-822-1969. Pound 69 if you're calling from a Verizon wireless phone. It is a free call. I'm Jimmy Myers here on 96.9 Boston Talks. Israel/Palestine. Basically, it's a question of where you stand. And we're not going to be hollering and screaming. We're just going to do this like calm, collected, civil people. Before that date, whether it be May 14th or May 15th, if you wish to be technical, I've got May 15th from the United Nations, but May 15th, whatever, May 14th. I'll go the weekend of May 14th, May 15th. All right.
I'll go cut you some slack.
All right. So I'll get a slight pass there. Before that time, that land was called Palestine. To this day, now much of that, a good chunk of that land is called Israel. The Palestinians say they will fight to the death. The Israelis say they will fight to the death. My issue, and I will definitely want Rabbi Morse to talk about this when we get back, is somewhere down the line, if this thing continues along the path that it's going, we're talking about weapons of mass destruction, we're talking about Iran, we're talking about a whole bunch of things, it means that young American children will have to go to the Middle East to Iran, to Israel, whatever. I'm tired. I'm tired of war, guys. I'll tell both of you that. I'm tired of that region being so unstable, and we have to come up with some answers. We'll be right back.
It's not a website. It's a calling online.
Play for 3 minutes.